deck spotlight choice?
Well, it was a deck spotlight choice because it's the only mage out of all.
Capitalize and play the big stuff.
It's Cycle Mage on ladder. It's like a 51% win rate. Partly because it's a very difficult deck to play, but partly because there's just a ton of rogues on ladder, which can do all sorts of things. And it's hard to get a read on what you're playing against, so it's hard to know. I think Cycle Mage is much better suited for a tournament environment. But we'll see. Only time will tell. Let's get into it. Game one, both players with their primary decks, of course. And Zalae's primary deck, we saw it. His tertiary deck is the one that I have my eye on. He's got a Useful Brewmaster, double Big Game Hunter, double Super Collider. So that's going to allow him to fight better against the Mage. But not relevant right now since he's just got his normal, good old-fashioned primary Bomb Warrior deck.
All right, well, without Conjurer's Calling and the Mountain Giant, the Mage fights a pretty fair battle, which is not what you want to be doing against the Warrior. You kind of want to be doing the unfair stuff. Dr. Boom Genius comes in the hand. That's going to help if Zalae can get to that point. I've seen some games often go to the wire, and Dr. Boom Genius able to clutch out just enough answers to all of the big threats and wide boards that Mage can create. That double Town Crier.
Plus Dr. Boom Genius in his opening hand.
Yeah.
That's a good hand.
The double Town Crier here, probably going to be a lot more impactful than if Monsanto doesn't have that giant, because the militia commanders and the Ziliacs are going to help really deal with those mid-sized minions really effectively.
Yeah. Zalae can honestly just curve out here. Double Town Crier into Clockwork Goblin into militia commander into Ziliacs. Into Coin Dr. Boom. All right, his curve is set. We're good to go.
Seems good.
Monsanto missing pretty much all of his key power cards, maybe with the exception of Conjurer's Calling, but wants to draw a Book of Specters, wants to draw Mountain Giant. Wants to draw Fire Tree Witch Doctor and Messenger Raven, these things that just give him more value early game and put a body on the board early game. Now, he does have Scale Worm. That's something to fight for the board. But the thing about this deck is it doesn't want to operate from behind. Especially with the version that Monsanto has, he does not include Mind Control tech, which obvious for what he's trying to do. He's trying to beat the greedier deck, so no Mind Control tech. But this deck doesn't want to be reactive. They want to place a threat, force their opponent to remove it. If they don't, they capitalize with Conjurer's Calling. If they do remove it, they replace it with another big threat. Repeat until Conjurer's Calling activates, and then repeat until dead. That's how the deck wants to move. If you're forced to play a card every turn just to react to what your opponent's doing, you never get that opportunity. And I think that's where you talked about the inconsistencies earlier of like Staz in Asia Pacific. If you keep doing that against Warrior, eventually they're going to outvalue you. Eventually they're going to pick up their key pieces of removal, and you'll never get something going.
Jeez. Yeah, not even going to ping any of the minions on the board here. Monsanto with a very slow start.
What's the ping to the face for? What do you think?
I think the logic is that any minion that he pings, Zalae is just going to trade in anyways. If he says he plays Scale Worm and he trades into like a 3/3 or something else like that, like the Town Crier gets, it doesn't matter if it's a 1/2 or a 1/1, it's going to trade into a minion, so you might as well get the damage to face.
I suppose.
So a lot of times, part of the more difficult thing of like trying to preemptively attack a minion is that if they're likely to trade in one of the minions anyway, they just choose whatever is better. So you're kind of stuck in this like, you know, you're gonna waste damage no matter what you do.
Yeah, but I suppose. I guess the way that I was looking at it was if I was in Zalae's spot, Mountain Giant, you know, is at least 2 turns away. There's not really that much stuff you're going to trade into. If he plays a Twilight Drake, you're going to trade Town Criers into it. You're just going to keep going face. So if Monsanto knows that, then he would start picking off minions to try and reduce the damage over a couple turns. But I understand the backside of that, whereas maybe he just never has another turn to pick. So even if Zalae, even if you assume Zalae's never trading in his Town Criers, it's still correct to ping face because he's never fitting in another ping. The way his hand works out.
Defend the gates.
So, what does Admiral always say? 2 roads to El Paso.
That's exactly what he says. Oh man,
What?
It's so fast.
That took 2 turns at least.
Bomb War would be so much better if you always drew it within the first 3 turns of shuffling into your opponent's deck. Like shuffling into the top 3. Monsanto has, you know, the Ziliax to recover some of it, but it's only a little bit, and then Zalae can get ahead on the board. This is probably the most ahead I've seen the warrior get in front of a mage in a while.
It'll slow down.
It does slow down, but at the same time, with Dr. Boom Mad Genius, like, Zalae should be able to win back the board, and like the hardest part is over, which is fading the early game giant that you can't answer.
Unity, precision, perfection.
That is a very big mug.
I wonder if Zalae just Ziliaxes right back. It gets more initiative and pushes damage. Seems like something Zalae usually thinks about, which is like, how can I maximize my mana usage? How can I push the most damage?
Oh, Harrison Jones, I think, is the most damage investment.
Yeah, but he's got Weapons Project Harrison Jones as well.
That's true. That's very true.
I like saving that.
Yeah, actually, I like the Ziliax. Then you can coin into Dr. Boom and Mad Genius, and then roll into Weapons Project Harrison Jones. Now, that's an ideal world. It's probably not going to happen that way because Monsanto has a handful of big minions.
If you go into a Ziliax, coin Dr. Boom, Harrison Jones Weapon Project, what does your opponent do for 6 mana? He plays a Mountain Giant? That's scary. I guess you'll have to cross that bridge when you get there anyways, because it's not like you can answer it easily, regardless.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Pushing the damage. I like spreading it actually here too, instead of stacking it onto 1 minion. Makes it so that if his opponent does have Scale Worm or whatnot, it's not gonna, or even just like Crowd Roaster on the following turn, it makes it so that he's less all in on 1 minion being magnetized. It's nice. It's a good split there. So Monsanto normally would like to play like a Mountain Giant in this position. I think he's hesitating to first evaluate if he's going to fall too far behind on the board if he plays Mountain Giant, and then his opponent's just pressing for damage and eliminating his minions.
Yeah, I honestly think at this point he has to either wait until he can Mountain Giant Conjurer's Calling in a single turn, or try and use one of these other minions like Astromancer to get a Conjurer's Calling a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
So it seems like Scale Worm Ping and roll that into Astromancer is the most reasonable of plays.
I like it. Yeah, Zalae actually had the Dynomatic, so playing the Mountain Giant, Dynomatic plus the Eternian Rover is an easy trade, and then Monsanto doesn't have that huge Conjurer's Calling that everyone's afraid of when they play this deck. Harrison Weapons Project seems really nice in this spot.
It does, and the reason why I like that over Dr. Boom Mad Genius is because it gives something on the board to trade into Astromancer. Because let's say you Dr. Boom Mad Genius here and trade, Astromancer is unanswered. And you may never have another chance to play Weapons Project Harrison. Because that's a 7-mana play that just develops a 5/4. So it does gain armor, but it's not about that. It's about not falling too far behind on board and being able to save your removal for when you absolutely need it. And Zalae agrees.
Yeah, no, it seems really powerful for the reasons you mentioned. And, the way that I prefer to play against almost any deck that's proactive is to take a half step before them, right? Like if they're going to develop big stats like Handlock or, in this case, Hand Mage, right? Being able to develop preemptively gives you so many tools like you were talking about.
Yeah.
I like the way you're describing it. Astromancer seems so much worse now. But it's not like Monsanto doesn't have plays. He still has Crowd Roaster. He still has a Scale Worm that he just drew. Not fantastic plays, but plays nonetheless.
Summoner Mage feels so weird to me because when you have Book of Specters on 2 and you play a Mountain Giant on 3, You think to yourself, why would anybody ever play Cyclone Mage? And then when you don't have Book of Specters on 2, and you have a game like this, you think to yourself, why would anybody play Summoner Mage?
It's tricky.
It's very tricky.
Yeah. I mean, now, that being said, he summons a 6-mana minion. We've seen some really powerful 6-mana minions do Power of Creation. Gets a Soul Warden? I don't think that's going to do anything here.
I mean, it's still a body.
Yeah. Actually, I don't even know if that's a... So, I gotta admit, TJ, I've been losing track a little bit more of card names.
I literally have no idea what that card is. It's also golden, which throws it off.
Right.
Because I don't often play with golden cards, especially... I assume that's an epic.
I am but a poor plebeian.
Can we have the spectator mouse over that card for my own curiosity?
This is on paper, an easy Dynomatic clear of some capacity.
What now?
I think Zalae could... Let me see. I think... What else is he thinking about? It is 7 mana. Dr. Boom being on 7. Seems like it is an appropriate response. But when your opponent develops more minions, Dynomatic becomes less consistent.
Yes. He can double trade Dynomatic, and then next turn, Dr. Boom and Shield Slam in the same turn. This gives Monsanto a definite Conjurer's Calling target.
Okay. Reducing the good trades. Zalae pushing the damage where he feels like he can.
Okay.
A little bit of a punish, though, because the Scale Worm and then even, like, the Sunfury Protector to stop any damage from charging into him. It's like, these are options at Monsanto's disposal. He can also just trade into this 5/4 and then, like, Mountain Giant, Sunfury Protector. That also doesn't allow him to do the Mountain Giant Conjurer's Call.
I wonder.
Dan, I love pushing face damage. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world.
It's like one of the only things you can do to win the game.
It is.
One of.
I love it. But
Oh, Polymorph's interesting.
I don't know if that's correct. I don't know. Maybe I'm...
One thing that Monsanto has to consider, by the way, is his hand size. If he plays too many cards, he actually can't go Mountain Giant on 6 into Conjurers for 3 more mana. So if he does end up choosing any of these cards, he has to only play one of them. Polymorph seems to be the most effective removal. You just Polymorph and ping. Mountain Giant still stays at 6 mana for the following turn. Oh, I wasn't anticipating this.
This still keeps the hand size the same. Well, not anymore.
Baron getting. Uh-oh. It's off his own 2/2. Damages himself a little bit more, but he's putting on maximum pressure. And based off this pan out, Monsanto's going for his counterattack now. And then he still has the mana flexibility to do the Mountain Giant plays if he picks up another Conjurer's Calling. All right. I can get behind that. So we have Shield Block, Shield Slam to deal with 1 threat. We have 4 more mana remaining after that. I guess Dynomatic help clears off the rest, but it's not guaranteed. Oh no, it's 5 mana, excuse me. Oh. Wow, this got really awkward. Not having that Armored Shield Slam is really annoying here.
He could triple Warpath, trade over Blastmaster Boom, and leave the Baron getting up with 2 health.
Okay.
But then he's taking 14, 15, 16. So he'd go down to 11 health, which is very scary. But he'd have Shield Block, Shield Slam to back that up. Plus double Dynomatic.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, Omega Devastator is a 4-mana 4/5 rush. It's still a pretty solid minion. It's just that your eyes glow up with the possibility of getting maximum damage. No Dragon in the hand for the Crowd Roast, or something that I probably should have pointed out earlier. So Monsanto doesn't have like that luxury of dropping that minion.
Still quite a few left in the deck. He's got 1 Twilight Drake, 2 Dragon Maw Scorchers, and then Alexstrasza. So still 4 activators left in the deck for the Crowd Roaster.
What do you think about doing something like pretty aggressive? What if you play like Mountain Giant and then taunt only the Giant and push phase? I don't know if you're in the position to do that because Zalae's in 30, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like you're fighting a losing battle over time by just trying to develop minions that have rush. Like, you know, imagine if like Zalae just permanently had a Hound Master Shaw on the board. It's like, well, developing big threats into it always is kind of risky.
I honestly think that's his best line of play, though.
Like
What else is he going to do? Rabble Bouncer and then hit base? That's not pushing enough.
Yeah, like I'm looking at it, and also what I also like about it is that your opponent used a Mega Devastator. Plus, they're coming up on 9 mana, so he couldn't even utilize the 10-minute damage battle cry.
Yeah.
Like Monsanto seems to agree with this, and it just seems like a pretty sucky situation no matter what happens here, because I think Monsanto is very far behind unless this Giant can do some major work. And we know that Zalae, well, actually Zalae before he hero powered had the Warpath.
He had the Warpath. I was just thinking the exact same thing.
Okay.
Now, yeah, that's a tough situation. He's got some wiggle room as far as health is concerned. And Delivery Drone is one of the best Dr. Pure Powers. I think it's just the best. It's very flexible.
Oh, I love that fuse thing.
Everything you pick has Rush. You can almost certainly find a play to make.
This would be a good time for
Okay, so still finds a way to clear. Pretty much no matter which way you slice it there, actually that's just the best outcome. Because if it hits the Mountain Giant multiple times and the Soul Warden or whatever it was is left up at 2 health, and you can't get past it. So just a solid outcome overall. Now Zalae has double Omega Devastator, Blast Shield to gain health, Omega Assembly to pick up probably another Omega Devastator. Everything that Monsanto plays for essentially the remainder of the game, Zalae has an answer to.
Well, Monsanto doesn't really have much going on now that everything's been cleared and crisis averted. You know, a lot of times I think
what to do.
A lot of times I think this mage tends to have problems with follow through, because you play such big stuff, and then when it gets dealt with, you're like, huh, I don't have Khadgar, I don't have Giants, I don't have Conjurer's Calling. I guess I just play like normal mid-range minions, and that doesn't feel anywhere near as good.
Time to just make the biggest board and hope it works out. Also, Monsanto's at 13 health, so Zalae could go for a play like Omega Devastator, the Twilight Drake, and then Dino-Matic, and then have 7 power on board. He also fits in Omega Assembly with that line of play. How about another Omega Devastator, just adding insult to injury? This is brutal. Then has Wrench Caliber to follow it up to get those extra swings and put the bombs in.
Master plan. Save the best for last.
Job's done.
I'm trying to think of like a series of outs here from Monsanto based off what he could draw, and I'm really not seeing it, TJ. I'm looking at like Messenger Raven at this point. And as we all know, when you're forced to rely upon Raven, set yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, the year of the Raven was pretty disappointing, I agree.
No, actually, I think Raven and Language Hacker have been doing a great job in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, they have.
Language Hacker has been killing it on the cast. It turns out when you're really good at Hearthstone, you know how to talk about Hearthstone. Sometimes.
Yeah, it turns out when you your name is Language Hacker, you have quite a way with words.
Maybe we should have Language Hacker cast, but the entire time he has to spell out his analysis. There's not much to be said about this. Monsanto has to remove minions. He has Polymorph, he has Crowd Roaster, but he doesn't have much time because Zalae is coming for him. He has Hecklebot, Omega Devastator, Security Rover, even the Elysiana as the Victory Lap BM.
I think Zalae might be on the damage train here as he's shown us this whole game. Omega Devastator, Wrench, Caliber, Kaboom. Pushes 7 this turn, shuffles a bomb into the deck. Still has 7 damage represented on board.
Okay, then. Save the best for last.
Okay, just going to go with more spread of damage. He knows that there are 2 acidic swamp oozes in Monsanto's deck. So maybe he wants to hold that for surprise damage.
There's nothing really out here for Monsanto. I think
Yeah.
he has the Astromancer as a potential way to climb back with 4 costed minions.
My calculations?
Not really that many good things there. That's one of the better ones.
He needed
You win.
Book of Specters at any point, one of them, sooner than halfway through his deck. And in this game, he's decided to get rid of Sunfear Protector, Voodoo Doll, and Rabble Bouncers, and has put in Messenger Raven, Barista Lynchin, Double Power Creation, and Calighost.
Oh, I love this Barista.
So just pure value and pure just minion generation. He has decided to put in this. Meanwhile, Zalae has taken out Eternium Rovers, his 1 Wrench Caliber, his Blastmaster Boom, and Archivist Elysiana. So it doesn't have kind of the boom, the bomb package, and doesn't have the ultimate late game with Elysiana for fatigue, but has included Youthful Brewmaster, Big Game Hunter, and Super Collider. 2-ups of Big Game Hunter and Super Collider. And he has both of those. So he has the answers early on. Now Monsanto has the Book of Specters, has the Conjurer's Calling, and has the coin, which means he can go turn 2 Book of Specters and turn 3 Mountain Giant if he picks it up.
Yeah, I mean, Book of Specters with 2 power creations teched in. Whew. Just gotta cross your fingers that you don't have that problem of drawing a power creation. And that is one of the criticisms. Even like, Brian Kittler, who's played like Book of Specters Mage more times than I think anybody else on the planet prior to this rotation. He was just talking about how he really just did not like Power of Creation being put in his deck list because he felt like it ruined a lot of his early game plan because you just don't want to be discarding cards with it. Part of Book of Specter's power spike is solely through its card draw. And
here we go.
It's huge.
Minion. Oh, Conjurer's Calling.
Whoops.
See, that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen regardless.
Zalae gave us a ding. We can't hear it, but I can hear it ringing throughout my head right now. There it is.
I have this. I have like the Warden from Diablo 2's keys in my hand.
I don't even know where you got those.
It's giant keys that look like they access the prison, which apparently is the key to our freedom, TJ.
I think it's the prison where we're holding Sottle captive.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
Or where Derek is holding him captive.
Where Derek is holding him captive. He left his keys lying around. Big mistake, Derek. Big mistake.
All right, Monsanto has 2 options here. You can obviously coin out the Twilight Drake for maximum board presence early on. You can also go for a Fire Tree Witch Doctor, but I believe, does he have 9 cards? Okay, he's got 9 cards, so he can still hold on to it and
What to do?
be safe from discarding.
But he wants to get the pressure rolling, and I'm not surprised by that. He can make a play like double Fire Tree Witch Doctor next turn if he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, funny enough, like all these new tech cards from Zalae are coming into play here. The Youthful Brewmaster, the BGH, and the Super Collider, and yet not really what he needs right now. The good news is that, you know, if it was a Giant, he'd still be equally as unprepared for this turn. And so in a very funny way, because Zalae is like so prepared for the worst case scenario, he doesn't really have a sufficient answer for just the normal average outcome, which is having like a regular 4-mana minion. Although I wouldn't say a Twilight Drake exactly is a regular 4-mana minion.
I wonder.
And it's because, you know, Zalae doesn't have access to like the Clockwork Gnome, doesn't have like other things to help lower its health and then finish it off with the usual rushers. If I'm Zalae, I think I might even be tempted just to play Youthful Brewmaster on this board.
Yeah.
Just to try to get it. Or even the Omega Devastator. You kind of have, like, reasons for both. And if it softens up the Drake, you might be able to use Super Collider on the following turn.
It looks like he's setting up for Harrison Jones.
Okay. That makes sense.
I don't disagree with this one either. Youthful Brewmaster actually does have a lot of value with like Omega Devastator and Big Game Hunter.
That's fair. Later in the game.
Yeah, because they're such high value cards that it's oftentimes one Big Game Hunter isn't enough in the late game because when they're playing a big threat, they're also using Conjurer's Calling. Now, one boon for Zalae is that he just saw one of the Conjurer's Calling discarded by the Book of Specters, so his like maximum threat potential that he has to worry about is lowered.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think that the only caveat to that is if Monsanto develops an equally large mid-sized minion, you could have things like Super Collider ready, but perhaps that's what he's afraid of. Like, if he plays Super Collider on 5, he's walking into that double Acidic Swamp Boost potential, and then kind of gives up all of the momentum that he could have. Like, Super Collider getting oozed is a really... It's just not that great of a card if you know that it's going to get removed. Compared to, say, if you play the Youthful Brewmaster or Super Collider. Sure. So I can buy it. I can buy it for sure. That being said, playing Harrison into this doesn't exactly feel very appetizing because if your opponent's able to destroy, they're pushing 9 damage per turn. This is where like the tempo gets really out of control. So Zalae taking a little bit of a risk here. Only a tiny bit, though.
Does pick up Dr. Brew Mad Genius plus a Shield Slam, so a little bit more spot removal. Nice combination on turn 8, if he wants to wait that long.
Right. There's not many cards that can truly punish this. People don't, like, it's safe from Ziliax. People don't really want to Voodoo Doctor this. So overall, I think it's a nice calculated risk here from Zalae.
Yeah.
Like, the more I think about it, the more I think that this line is perfectly fine and just probably better overall.
Yeah,
Less punishing.
Yeah, so as a reminder, he did remove both Voodoo Dolls, Rabble Bouncer, and Sentry Protector from his list to make this more heavy.
Yes, he doesn't know that, of course. For sure. He can suspect it.
Yes.
Because he didn't see Power of Creation discard, he only saw the contest.
Nope, and everything that's been played has also been played in the primary deck.
Yeah. So Monsanto on 5 mana. Dragon Ball Scorcher is his other dragon to activate Crowd Roaster. I feel like he has to go with the Fire Tree Witch Doctor instead. Ray of Frost, another Conjurer's Calling. Interesting. Very, very interesting. The Ray of Frost is kind of what we're talking about. Being able to use tempo on your side, like pushing Ray of Frost, or using Ray of Frost to push damage.
Yeah.
The nice thing about keeping Harrison Jones on the board, too, is that it makes Dynamatic worse, because then they're likely to hit their own minion. But Conjurer's Calling is like the reason you play this deck. So I think a value trade here from Monsanto and the Conjurer's Calling is like perfectly fine as well.
Yeah, now 4-drops are not super valuable, but those are decent ones. 5 health.
Yes.
Protects them from Warpath for multiple turns. And the way he's positioned this as well means that I guess he couldn't control the outcome of Conjurer's Calling, but it makes it a little bit more difficult for Zalae to want to clear. Because you can attack into like the regenerating or the ice cream peddler. Yeah, ice cream peddler. But if it attacks the Yeti, it dies. But if it attacks the Fire Tree Witch Doctor, then it lives. So decent positioning all around.
Yeah, and now the mid-size minion pressure is very significant. There's 14 damage on the board, so Zalae needs to deal with this, and he's got situational removal cards. I mean, all of these aren't looking that good. And he's kind of back in the same position as he was with the previous thing, where if he Super Collided, he'd be losing a lot of momentum if his opponent had the ooze.
And honestly, he just doesn't have any good Super Collider targets to begin with.
Right. So the gambit from Zalae is on this Dynamatic.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that does line up for a nice Warpath.
It does, actually. He doesn't have Warpath, but
Right.
it does line up nicely. But as far as just outcomes go, not the best.
He does know that this also lines it up so that Monsanto can't trade very easily.
Okay, yep. Another bonus.
He can't at least value trade and then go for the Conjurer's Calling, because he knows that there's a second calling. And also,
He
Zalae...
doesn't know that there's a second calling.
What to do?
Sorry, he does know. And...
What?
Well, Twin Spell. So he knows there's another copy.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant another copy of it. Like another... Like the second one. Like to be able to double
Right.
counter.
He didn't know he discovered one.
He didn't know he discovered one.
But he has the knowledge of the Twin Spell version.
Yes.
So he knows that the board can still just continue to get bigger.
That's right. Now he knows that there's also a second copy and now 2 more copies because of Twin Spell. Ah, Blood Witch. Weird.
If I was Monsanto here, do I want to trade and even acknowledge this Dynamatic? Yes, probably because of the threat of Ziliax. We saw that actually previously in the other series. Like, what can 1 4-attack mech on the board, 3 4-attack really do? Turns out a lot when we have Ziliax.
Oh, Meteorologist too. That's could be like a decent amount of burst given like an empty board state, especially with how big his hand is. He's got so many ways to just keep building upon this board. So even if Zalae manages to remove, it's just not going to stop. He's got Astromancer to follow this up, or Conjurer's Calling. Then he has Power of Creation to follow that up. Meteorologist for burst from hand.
Yeah, like, this is going to be one of those games where Zalae, if he gets overwhelmed, he might die with, like, a full hand of, like, all of Warrior's best cards. That kind of sucks to be in that position because you didn't get to experience the 10 mana, like, where you're just, like, unstoppable. And to be fair, Monsanto also has, like, a pretty godlike hand as the game continues to progress. He has Astromancer, Power of Creation, and even has, like, Meteorologist to close the game. Like, maybe just deals 9 damage to the face. Zalae's in a tough spot, and I think he might just end up going for a removal play here. Is he going to attack the 5/3? He does. Ouch. He's at 14 with 9 on the board. He's just dead.
He is dead.
Meteorologist finishes the game here.
Yeah.
Behold the cosmos!
And I understand Zalae's plan there. He didn't really have any other options. It was just try and set up the best brawl possible, survive, and then stabilize with Dr. Boomad Genius. So his head was in the right place, but unfortunately just got overrun too quickly, too early. And an Eternium Rover on turn 1, which not necessarily the best thing to be able to do. Maybe to activate Execute, that's about the only thing I can think of. But let's get into it. Comes down to this. Game number 3. Summoner Mage versus Bomb Warrior. And calling it Bomb Warrior is almost a lie at this point because he only has Clockwork Goblins. This is as close to just Control Warriors you can get.
Yeah, and I feel like Monsanto with his opening hand here is going to look just for the Book of Spectres again, just kind of echoing what you were saying the previous game. What you really want is that Book of Spectres. That's what really makes this deck sing. Having that Town Crier also is really nice as well. It's an effect that stacks on itself. The Book of Spectres not only, of course, drew cards and gave resources to Monsanto, but also pumped up the Twilight Drake strength, which allowed it to survive by 1 HP, which allowed it to get the Conjurer's Calling to summon a couple of 4-mana minions.
But even without Book of Spectres, his hand is still pretty good. Has just minions to play that replace themselves in hand, which is good.
This Book of Galaxy in a minion-centric deck sounds appetizing. It takes so long to get to that point.
But once you do get to that point,
I haven't really taken Pocket Galaxy. I mean, it sounds cool. It sounds sweet. I don't think it's something that you can reliably pull off. I mean, last game we barely got to 7 before the game was already decided.
Yeah, Spellbender is just... Spellbender forces him to check for multiple secrets to not get punished by something big, especially when the match is on a knife's edge like it normally is in this matchup, where it's like you have a big threat and one option to remove it.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like the threat of Spellbender isn't the actual effect, it's what makes Zalae get to the conclusion that it is Spellbender.
What now?
Some respect shown now from Zalae, but I think perhaps it's a lesson learned from the previous game. Dying with a full hand, it just feels really bad, and he's just gonna try to gather his resources for the following turns. Just maybe 4-mana 4/5s to contest. Tempo is king. Is this a game where Monsanto once again coins out the Twilight Drake, comes out as a 4/7 in this position?
You could just go with Messenger Raven, though, and save the coin for maybe a bigger power play.
Right.
I mean, a 3/2 is still applying pressure, right? Maybe it plays into Warpath, which can sometimes be hard to use with how big stuff is. And we saw last game that Monsanto, because the early Twilight Drake was able to just keep the tempo up and keep snowballing, but he didn't have this kind of option available to him last game. So,
right. I mean, I even like keeping the coin just because if you pick up Mountain Giant, it becomes it's still like a cheap giant.
Yeah.
Oh, another Caligos.
Whoa.
There is also merit to Water Elemental against a class that uses weapons a lot. So you can Water Elemental, play on curve, and then just like freeze your opponent's weapons so they can't utilize Weapons Project or even Super Collider, because you know Zalae is likely to play that deck list again.
But he's going for the greed, Dan.
If anything, I mean, I wonder if one could argue that Zalae showing his deck list at any capacity could be something worth hiding, right? Because you don't know what your opponent's playing. But I'm pretty sure that Monsanto would put Zalae on the Super Collider list. It's just a very effective way to deal with Giants, as well as the VGH. Twilight Drake seems really good now in this spot. You know, without the prevalence of Execute in a lot of the warrior deck lists, Twilight Drake's a lot more free to do damage that way. However, Zalae and Purple are two people that did actually put Execute in their warrior lists, and it pays off against cards like Twilight Drake.
It's a weird world when the power level of Warrior is so high that Execute, one of the best removals of all time, is often being cut from lists.
Defend the gates!
Shield Slam and Militia Commander can deal with this.
Yeah, still leaves a 2/1 lying around.
So now Zalae is kind of like in this position, because Monsanto has this Dragon Moth Scorcher, which is easy slim pickings. Wow, Dragon Moth Scorcher into a Khadgar and Conjure Something. Oh boy! Oh, that's not a Conjure's Calling. That's a Power of Creation.
No, it's a Power of Creation.
The other purple ambiguous spell that I can't really tell off the art.
Now Zalae's managed to stifle this board much better than he did last game, but he's still not out of the woods yet. Because none of these plays seem super appealing. If he equips Super Collider, he has nothing to attack in this turn. He's vulnerable to the double Acidic Swamp Ooze from Monsanto's deck. Omega Devastator is a fantastic late game card that buys him a ton of time. It can kill pretty much any minion outside of Calicos. and it doesn't even challenge the board in a big way this turn. So it just seems like everything is just slightly inefficient for Zalae.
That being said, he kind of has that other problem now. From the if he plays this Omega Devastator and kind of goes back to like the tempo philosophy, he might be like running out of resources. Monsanto can play the grind game because Zalae's not playing value anymore. Pass. I kind of agree with this, given that it doesn't seem like Omega Devastator would be doing very much. So if you're Monsanto, do you want to protect your interest here? You can Mountain Giant coin Spellbender, stop some kind of single target removal through a spell. However, we know that Zalae has big game hunters, 2 of them in the deck. And he also just passed on 6 mana.
Yeah.
So it feels like Zalae might be holding a lot of reactive cards. Channel the Dragonhawk. You talk about some late game prowess. That card has a lot of potential.
Yes.
Because you can not only activate Ragnaros, but you can also Conjure's Calling the 7 mana card, the body of Jan'alai. Of course, as you can see, Monsanto hasn't hero powered once.
Time runs out on me.
But if Jan'alai's in his hand, then he knows that that's an option for late game. He can start weaving those in. He's got a long time to be able to play that. But just going to go with Daring Fire Eater, which just has a little bit more consistency in its ability to be used.
Right. I mean, he has to wait 8 turns at least to get Jan'alai off. It looks appetizing. I think it takes a very long time to get to that point. And obviously, Sorcerer's Apprentice in a deck that has like 4 spells, not really that great. The power of discount effects is unbelievably more effective when it's cheaper cards because you're getting a larger percentage discount. From 2 to 1 is a 50% discount versus an 8 to 7 on power creation is 12.5.
Yep.
So it's 4 times less effective on average.
Zalae back to square one, honestly.
Yeah, although this is a turn where you have to kind of figure out the secret so that way when you do want to play like your real power swing turns, it's not that big of a deal. So if you play Clockwork Goblin and it's Mirror Entity, whatever. If you play and it's Frozen Cloak doesn't exist.
No, it's not.
Yeah, Mirror Entity mainly, not that big of a deal. And then you get to test if it's like Splitting Image versus Ice Spear or Vaporize, etc. The main thing that's on Zalae's mind now is, okay, is it Counterspell versus Spellbender? And how does that dynamic work with, like, Brawls later on? Do I need a Mega Assembly before I do that?
What to do? What to do?
And then if it's Splitting Image, positioning matters with Super Collider as well.
It does. Positioning always matters when you're facing a Super Collider, but for Splitting Image, that's like extra
Just extra thought.
Right.
What
So
to
Monsanto
do?
has a Daring Fire Eater, excuse me, as a way to ping this down. You can squeeze in the Mountain Giant in between as well. Mountain Giant goes down. He can Power
runs out on
Creation
me.
and then coin out the Caligos. So that is the 7, 8, 9 turns.
Welcome
And
to
still
the
has a ton of power cards left in his deck as well. So, and if Zalae wants to brawl this, then he's kind of forced to play Omega Assembly. Weapons Project.
Nice pickup. Nice pickup.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, like you said, test for the Counterspell.
Yep.
Not gonna rush. He definitely needs to deal with that Mountain Giant, though. And of course, the Brawl still might not be effective against the Mountain Giant. There's a 1 in 4 chance of it surviving anyways. That being said, 3 out of 4 times, Mountain Giant dies.
Great math, Dan.
Thank you. trying to keep up, you know.
Yeah.
No counter spell. Does he choose to brawl, or is he going to let this giant wreak havoc and then brawl later? That is viable as well.
Oh, man, that's a lot of damage to take. That's 15, 17 just on board shown. And by killing the 1/1, he kind of
Trying to mask it a little bit.
masked the fact that he has Brawl.
Right. Monsanto here might be really tempted to press in. But again, Zalae passed with so much mana and no BGH on the Mountain Giant. So we can at least assume that there's no BGH. Because I feel like that would come down regardless of whether or not Zalae had to brawl.
Absolutely.
What to do?
And then he would have killed the 3/2. So Zalae attacking the 1/1 seems very interesting, right? Like, the weapon lines up very nicely against
I
it.
see a vision in the flames.
It was to test for splitting image, I'm sure.
Oh, yes,
Like
you're
moving
right.
the 1/1.
Right. Test for splitting image, you're right.
Arcane Intellect just lets Monsanto keep this board as is. If he picks up Power Creation, I'm sure he's going to pull the trigger on that because it just gives him a better chance for a better outcome from Brawl if it were to happen.
I mean, Monsanto has a really good post-brawl opportunity. He has the Khadgar coin Power Creation.
Yep.
And now we have 8, 10, 15 damage, 16, 18 damage. Zalae needs to deal with this now. Picks up the Execute. Brawl has a higher chance now of eliminating that giant. I think you can't really wait any longer. Most of the time, though, giant dies. Second worst option.
Yep. But Zalae does have double Mega Devastator plus a Mega Assembly to kind of follow all this up. Monsanto has gas for days. And Dan, across the other regions, they've seen a lot of damaged Stegatrons. I'll tell you that.
Damage Stegatron. I mean, I think at this point, Monsanto would take anything that's sturdy because he just saw a brawl. And he is aware of the Super Collider. But Damage Stegatron definitely is the best here.
Or Reckless Rocketeer would just be game.
Yeah.
We must band
Reckless
together,
Rocketeer would be the
united
game.
for Dalaran.
That sounds good too. Argent Commander would be close to the game. Wow.
Mechanical Well.
Or Mechanical Well.
Wow. That's also very good.
Really scary as a board.
Because that 8 damage is not negligible.
It is not.
And there's just no way that Zalae can deal with this board. Wow. Okay. So it plays around Super Collider. It plays around even Super Collider BGH. Only removes 1. Still leaves a 7/7. Puts more power on the board than he started with. So this plays around nearly everything. Zalae needs kind of a miracle in Mega Assembly here.
So you can Omega Devastator the 3/6 and then Dynomatic and kill off the Khadgar. There's still 10 power showing. It's really scary.
What now?
But I don't really think Zalae has many ways out of the situation.
Light the fuses.
Okay, this allows him to execute instead.
Job done.
That makes sense. Execute is a premium removal tool for things like Caligos. Barista. Barista is not necessary. Monsanto can even... Can you find potential Aether here? There's
Pyroblast.
10, 13 damage. Yeah, Pyroblast, because his opponent's at 19. Fireball would also do it, I
Yeah,
think.
Fireball would be exact lethal. with 2 outs. He could also use Ziliax to push 3 extra damage because these are mechs.
Yeah, I think I like at least popping a couple of these eggs to make it more threatening. I think I like one of the Caligos. Your opponent already has difficulty dealing with it, and if he brawls with like this big wide board, you're still gonna leave up some of the mechanical moves. Monsanto taking it a little bit safer. Right, a little bit slower, still presenting a big threat. It's perfectly fine. But he's accounting for every possibility at this point. Like, he has so much overkill with the form of 2 Galagos. In terms of discovering it, it's okay.
Yeah, and honestly, he still was very conscious of Super Collider.
Oh, you're right. Super Collider is definitely something to think about, too.
Now this just makes it the most awkward with the Ziliax magnetized on the end.
Yep.
Means that there's just nothing. And also, he only presents 1 BGH target. BGH is half of Zalae's turn. Can't use a Mega Devastator. If that's the case, just everything kind of lining up really well, and Monsanto crossing all his T's to make sure that he's going to be able to cross this finish line. 13 damage presented on board. So Zalae has to remove one of these minions or fit in an armor up. And a Mega Devastator Ziliax doesn't really work either. It will kind of put the health, like bank on the health, because there's not really many ways to remove it with Voodoo Dolls cut from this list.
Man, this definitely does not do good for Zalae. I think he feels like kind of dead because he had to play as a Mega Devastators and nothing else here.
Yeah.
Again, there is this opportunity for Monsanto to discover a spell that could kill Zalae.
Yep, both Fireball and Pyroblast still lethal outs for Monsanto with Caligos.
You could also just go for a safe play.
With Crowd Roaster. I honestly think Caligos at this point is probably a safe play.
What to do?
It seems like it because 2 Mega Devastators were just used.
Yeah, even if you get like Blizzard, still decent.
Crowd Roaster works better with Barista Lichen. Barista Lichen gives you copies of your Battlecry minions. So Crowd Roaster seems pretty solid there.
Yep.
Monsanto, should he trade or should he go?
Someone's out on me.
And I think Zalae can't really get out of the situation very cleanly here. Staring at 18 damage, or sorry, 16 damage plus the hero power.
What now?
Clockwork Goblin Ziliax brings Zalae up to 18 health after the armor up.
Somebody order a bomb.
Yeah, the really tricky thing is that you're adding power onto the board.
Precision.
Yeah, but you're also forcing the trade because Monsanto doesn't really have a great way to deal with.
Sure.
Just removing a minion, like no polymorph effects, no dolls.
Crowd Roaster was just
Crowd
used.
Roaster was just used. That's the only copy. You saw-
Unless he has
yeah.
Caligos.
All right, now it's time for the Calicos. Any removal, there's 14, 18, yeah. Exactly, so he just removes this. And fireballs him out.
Fireball. I can't see the minion power, but it looks like it's a lot enough to finish the
Yeah,
game.
exactly 18.
And Monsanto is going to close it out 2-1. Shutting down Zalae and the first non-warrior win in the America's Hearthstone Grandmasters.
We need like a trumpet or something to celebrate.